election.
And thank you for joining us here on KTVB, whether you're watching us on ktvb.com or KTVB Plus or on the KTVB YouTube page. Welcome to election night.
Welcome. It is election night both here in Idaho and, of course, across the country. Polls have officially closed in all parts of Idaho now.
And we know this because of Idaho being split into two different time zones.
Right.
You've got 9 o'clock being the closing time for North Idaho, at least here, but it's 8 o'clock there. So they're on Pacific time zone. Some polls, those are in North Idaho, have closed just about, 40 seconds ago. So we should start to see some of those numbers trickle in within, not immediately, but probably within the next 10 or 15 minutes.
Yes, and of course, we'll update you guys on air and online as those results trickle in.
Absolutely. We do have team coverage tonight. We have Chief Political Reporter Joe Paris live here in studio with us tonight. He's going to update us with numbers on the touchscreen as soon as they come in. He's going to give us those numbers throughout the show, even throughout the night.
And I should mention on their Twitter, Ada County Elections was saying that they will start to have some results coming in around 9:15. So we'll keep our eye on that. We've got team coverage from across the Treasure Valley. You can see Abby Davis. She's at the Ada County Elections headquarters in Boise. Our Jude Binkley is live in Canyon County. Andrew Bartline is at the Democratic Party headquarters. And our Doug Petcash is at the Grove Hotel in downtown Boise, where the GOP set up its election night headquarters. We're going to get to all of them in just a moment.
Yes, but first we want to bring in our special guest for the night. As always, joining us here on election night, Dr. Stephanie Witt. Welcome.
Welcome. Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Great to be in the middle of another election.
Nice.
I know.
And as many of you know, political science professor from
Yes.
Boise State University.
Yeah, you always provide such critical insight and analysis on this night. And I know, as these results trickle in, it's always too early to say what something's going to be. And as we've talked about before, official results aren't really official and for another several days or week. But we can really get a good gauge, and the AP will call a race and say, this is the final outcome, really.
Absolutely.
So what are you paying attention to closest? I know that's a pretty broad question.
We've been talking about for a long time. We've been talking about it before we went live here tonight. So yeah, what are those races that you're kind of keeping an eye on?
Well, here in Ada County, we have what I expect to be some close commissioner races for the county commission. There are a handful of legislative districts you were talking about earlier that I think we might see some flipping from Democrat to Republican or vice versa. So there's a few competitive legislative races. Of course, we're in the national climate. So I'm curious to see, did we get the job of voting done peacefully? And did the mechanisms work? Did the machines work? Did people wait a long time?
Right.
All of that's part of what's happening.
Yeah, we hate to cut you off.
I'm checking some information here because we're getting word from our producer right now that they have called the race for governor already at 9:02. Check AP really quickly because no numbers, I don't think yet, Joe, right? In the governor's race right now, or any numbers coming in.
I don't see any numbers.
But it seems as if we're getting word that we are getting it called already for Governor Little, the incumbent.
Well, that's not a surprise.
Not a surprise.
I think there may be something interesting to see in the number of votes for Ammon Bundy as an independent. How well did the Democratic candidate do? It's a tough race for him. He had a low-key campaign, and we may see that in the fact that they've called the race so early.
Well, so early. I mean, 2018, we were just talking about this. Paulette Jordan was the Democratic candidate then. They didn't call that race this early that night.
Yeah, it was more hotly contested, as we've talked about too, both on Viewpoint and other stories that we've done with Ammon Bundy running as an independent. He originally did run as a Republican, decided to drop out of that primary so he could run as an independent. And I'm sure we've seen, him taking away some of those people that would traditionally vote for the Republican candidate, for Brad Little.
Yeah, typically when there are three candidates and one is pulling from the base of one of the main candidates, you might see someone slip by. This is sort of how President Clinton was elected back in '92. Ross Perot was an independent candidate. A lot of people that might have voted for the Republican voted for Ross Perot, and it just left just enough room for Clinton to sneak in, for example. So I think that if we had a stronger slate on the Democratic ticket for the governor's race, we could see Bundy being a spoiler.
Speaking of the Democratic ticket, hold on.
We want to get to Joe.
Hold on. We're going to go quickly. If we can get over to Joe over there.
I just thought this was notable. I just got an email just a moment ago from the Republican Governors Association congratulating Governor Little on his victory. Let me just read
the word is
this.
out.
Word is out. I mean, I can tell you, it came into my inbox just 1 minute ago at 9:04 p.m. It's the RGA statement, and we don't have a way to put this up on the screen for you, but the RGA, the Republican governors, they say that Governor Brad Little is leading Idaho. They congratulate him and his common sense solutions on record tax cuts and things that have unleashed unprecedented economic growth. That's the RGA co-chair governors Doug Ducey and Pete Ricketts. So, I mean, word is out there right now, Brian Morgan and Dr. Witt. So when we're starting to see statements, it feels pretty final.
Joe, 9:04, we reported that. That is maybe the earliest I've ever heard a gubernatorial race called.
It is in the time I've been paying attention. So I guess congratulations to Governor Little.
Congratulations.
I did notice there was a little more campaign activity in the last day or so of the campaign, some commercials that the governor ran. Otherwise, he's been pretty quiet since the primary.
Yeah, he has.
On the other side of that would be the Democratic ticket. And we're going to go over to Andrew Bartline right now, who is at Democratic headquarters in downtown Boise, I do believe. Andrew?
Yeah, that's right, Brian. I'm here with Democratic Party Chair Lauren Necochea. Now, you're a representative. You're also running your own race as well, but you represent the whole party. Sort of explain to us kind of what does success look like tonight for you guys?
Yeah, well, we feel like we've succeeded already in just turning around the trajectory of the Idaho Democratic Party. We had our largest, most robust coordinated campaign in the party's history with over 100,000 voter contact attempts over the last 4 days. And we also want to pick up seats. We're looking at county races. We're looking at picking up legislative seats, because the fact is that the margins really matter. Sometimes we lose really good bills by just a couple votes. That if we had a couple more Democrats, we could get those things across the finish line.
You've been up on that podium a couple times tonight talking to people that are gathering at this party. You said at one point, we need to stop the extremism, or enough is the language you use. What did you mean by that exactly?
Well, we see time and time again that the Republican Party is moving further and further into extremism, and there's no one in the Republican Party trying to bring it back. When a bill came up to jail librarians, almost every Republican in the House voted for it. When we saw the bill to put bounties on providers of abortions, on doctors and nurses when they provide abortion care, even in cases of rape and incest, even if the health of the patient is at risk, we saw Republicans fall into line and no one standing up for Idaho values. Idaho Democrats are the only ones standing up against the extremism.
I'm not sure if you heard this yet. I just heard this in my ear from our folks back in the studio. They have called the race for Brad Little, the incumbent. He is going to remain the governor. I'm curious, what are your initial reactions to that? Because there was a third candidate in there in Ammon Bundy. What is your initial reaction to that race getting called?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's unfortunate. Brad Little is sometimes held up as a moderate, but he signed bills to nearly strip away our ballot initiative rights. He signed all of the legislation that for the extreme abortion ban. He's not protecting us from extremism, and we'll hope to do better in 4 years.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Democratic Party Chair Lauren Necochea running a race of her own tonight, trying to keep her spot in the State House. We want to make it clear, too, that race being called, that is cited by the Associated Press. We will throw it back to you guys in the studio. Brian.
Yeah, exactly, Andrew. So not official, but again, AP can call these races. AP has also called, this just in, Senator Mike Crapo has won re-election again as well.
Yes, that was coming out about, 5 minutes ago now. That being called by NBC News, also putting that out on Twitter this evening. So some of these that aren't too much of a shocker when it comes to the results. But again, I think the caveat is, but it's not even 9:10 yet.
It's not, I mean, I'm just looking at our clock. So Crapo winning his 5th term, he beat out David Roth and independent candidate Scott Cleveland. No surprises there, really.
Right.
No surprise. I do think it's interesting that there was this independent candidate running to the right of Crapo. You know, so I think we saw there a little illustration of the tension within the Republican Party here in Idaho, that Senator Crapo, who's a very conservative lawmaker, was not conservative enough, and we had someone file as an independent to run against him. But I will say that Senator Crapo has had a fairly aggressive set of ads and outreach, and he's been actively campaigning.
He was one of the earliest ones to get in when it
Yes.
comes to at least advertising with
Right.
commercials and such.
And he participated in a debate, and there weren't.
He did?
There were many of these candidates who would not do that.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to get over to GOP headquarters in downtown Boise right now. Doug Petcash standing by with the former Speaker of the House and Lieutenant Governor candidate Scott Bedke.
That's right, Brian. I am standing here with Lieutenant Governor candidate, Republican Scott Bedke of Oakley. Well, we've been hearing now that two of the major races have been called. One, Governor Brad Little winning re-election, as well as Senator Mike Crapo. First, your reaction to the governor winning re-election?
Well, I'm not surprised. Governor Little has done a great job here in the state of Idaho. Under his leadership, we got through the pandemic. We've created the best state in the nation to live, to work, and to raise a family. Quickest state to recover after, the COVID scare. So I'm not surprised at all. Neither am I surprised that Senator Crapo was called and easily reelected. So anyway, we're waiting for the rest of the results.
Let's say we haven't seen anything yet on your race, which has been one of the very high-profile races, really for the first time I can remember the lieutenant governor's race being this high profile of a race. If you win and you get those numbers, you'll be working with Governor Brad Little. What would make you two a good team?
Well, we've worked together before. We had a great working relationship as speaker and governor, and but it predates all of that. He was very active and represented his industry, the livestock industry. I did as well, back before either one of us were in public office.
You've known him that long?
We've known each other a long time, and Scott and Brad will get along well, and we'll work together well for Idaho.
And so, it's going to be different than it was under Lieutenant Governor McGeehan. Is that a big thing for you?
Yes,
to do it differently?
Absolutely. Idahoans deserve a team that works together. After the election is over, our boss is the body politic of Idaho. And so this intramural fighting, we've got to put that behind us. I want to restore the dignity back to the office of Lieutenant Governor, be an extension of the governor, work hand in hand with him, and pushing an agenda that is good for Idaho.
And again, it's not, your race hasn't been called yet, but if you win, what's going to be that first focus for you?
Well, I think no one wants to wake up 10 years from now and wonder where our Idaho went. And I think we do that by keeping a positive business climate so Idaho kids can always get an Idaho job. And then that's kind of a circular thing, because you have to have a climate that is business positive, but in order to have a positive business climate, you got to have a good education system that feeds into the businesses. And I think that will be our challenge, is to maintain that, so that, like I say, one thing that unites us all is that we want our kids and our grandkids to have access to a good education. And I think that's what our concentration, we'll concentrate on that.
As Speaker of the House, you know very well about the divisions within the Republican Party and in the legislature.
Right.
Now we're seeing an election where there's going to be 40 or more new faces in the legislature. What are your hopes for how everybody's going to work together on the Republican side, because you're a Republican?
Well, I think that we'll just have to see how many there are, but there's going to be a huge turnover. And I've met many of these new legislators. Their heart is in the right spot. They're going to learn the ropes. It's going to take some time to do that. It's like learning a whole new language when you're in there, and it's going to take some time. But I'm confident that they'll step up, and that we'll have a productive legislative session that's coming. It won't be without its ups and downs, however, I predict.
Well, we'll keep a close eye on the numbers in your race as they trickle in. And thank you for your time, Mr. Speaker, and for your service as well.
Thank you.
And talk to you throughout the rest of the night, too.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you, sir. All right. Republican Speaker of the House and Lieutenant Governor candidate Scott Bedke with us just there. Let's send it back to the studio, guys.
Doug, we are already getting those results for the race between Speaker Scott Bedke and Terry Pickens Manweiler, the Democratic candidate. We can also see those numbers rolling in on the bottom of your screen for those of you that are watching. And I'm going to send it over to Joe Paris now, standing by. Joe, you are keeping track with an interactive county-by-county map right now.
We are, and there's some early, and I want to say these are very preliminary results. It'll be interesting, too, since the race for Mike Crapo has been called when we get to that in a second. Yeah. It's going to look super interesting. We'll get to that in a minute, but we just talked to the House Speaker, Scott Bedke. This is 4% of the vote, and if our team in the back wants to show this full on the screen here, we can show everybody here. With 4% of the vote in, Scott Bedke does lead Terry Pickens Manweiler by a little bit there, by about 2,000 votes. Most of the votes so far are coming in, though, though, from Bonneville County. Looks like 69% of the votes are in Bonneville right now. We are waiting for some more statewide results here, but the early lead does have Scott Bedke out ahead in front of Terry Pickens Manweiler. Again, a few minutes ago, we also mentioned that the race has been called for Republican Mike Crapo in the U.S. Senate race. You'll see right there, he's got that check mark there, so that'll indicate that they have called the race for Crapo. It is interesting, though, if you look at the map of Idaho here, you'll see a lot of the counties, I mean, they haven't reported yet. We only have 4% here. Again, though, Bonneville County, they did a great job tonight, it looks like. They got all their votes in, a lot of their votes in, I should say, 69%. You can see Crapo with a healthy lead over Roth and Cleveland. Again, this race was called by the Associated Press as well as NBC. It is interesting, though. Let's take a look at Ada County here where there is a little more of a liberal-leaning area. David Roth does have a little bit of a lead over Crapo right now, and you can see here in real time as the numbers are coming in and updating. By night's end, I wouldn't be surprised to see Crapo winning in basically every single county, but that's why we have the votes. We'll keep track on it. And one more spot for us to check right here in Owyhee County. No surprise there. Crapo, 337 votes to 29, Brian. So as we are keeping an eye on all the results coming in right now, we'll be able to filter some more to you. But again, if you're just joining us, the Associated Press has called the race for Governor Brad Little. And in Congress, they have called it for Republican longtime incumbent Mike Crapo.
All right, so that race not close at all so far, as it's already been called. Here we are, just 9:15 into the evening. But another race that we're keeping an eye on that is expected to be a lot closer than that race, happening within the Attorney General's office, or for the Attorney General's office. And we're going to go over to Andrew Bartline right now because he is with one of those candidates. That would be Tom Arkush, who's going up against Raul Labrador, but Tom Arkush for the Democratic side. Andrew?
Yeah, that's right. We're here with AG candidate Tom Arkush. And Tom, when you were up on that podium, you kept saying, I'm an unaffiliated person. I'm not affiliated with a party. But you're here with the Democratic Party. Explain that to us.
I said I wasn't affiliated. And this is my first affiliation strongly with a party.
And how are you feeling about that so far? Because you said before that you really weren't connected to a party, but you felt that it was important you do that and run in this race. Why?
Well, because of my opponent, for one thing, but secondly, because of the platforms of the two parties. To be affiliated with a party, to run, the Democrat platform is about health care, work, taking care of people. The Republican platform is 20 pages of interference in our lives and trickle-down economics.
What are you hoping to bring to the Attorney General's office? Because you could have sat to the side and decided this isn't something you're going to do. Running a race is very difficult. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and you were willing to do that. So this mattered to you. Why?
Because I think my opponent wants to propound his cultural values and not the law of the state or our Constitution or the United States Constitution. He's been very clear about that. I think that office is a law office, and it needs to propound only the Constitution of both the United States and the state and our statutes.
It's early. I know you got to look at some quick numbers just a moment ago. What are you feeling right now, Mr. Arkush?
I'm feeling at peace. I want to thank the people that voted, whoever they voted for. That's what makes democracy work.
Appreciate it. Democratic Attorney General candidate Tom Arkush. We'll throw it back to you at the station, Brian.
All right, Andrew, thank you. For now, we are going to send it out to the GOP headquarters as well, where Mike Crapo, Senator Mike Crapo, has taken the stage, winning his fifth term in office. Take a listen.
Or who the next one is. Oh, you're going to have to listen to me for some more. I'll go on for a bit, but not too long. I learned a long time ago that the best speeches are the short ones. Let me just say this. As I know you're all watching it too on the screens, and you're seeing that there is an intense battle going on across this country. But people are speaking up to take back America, and I'm confident that we're going to do so. I look forward for us to control both the House and the Senate. And we will put on the president's desk the right kind of policies that this country needs. We'll protect the Constitution. We'll protect the freedoms that our Constitution enshrines. We will make certain that we develop the kind of economy that protects the right of all Americans and the ability of all Americans to build their own American dream instead of having the federal government try to take over and run it for them. Folks, there is a battle that is seeing a crescendo here tonight across this country, but it does not end with this election. And I'm sorry to tell you this, but as soon as this election's over, we need to get engaged for the next one, because we've got to take back the presidency and then return to the kind of strong, stable, healthy America that we had just before Joe Biden took office. And I'll remind you what that was. Now you tell me when I got to stop, because you got me going on my speech now, Dorothy. But remember, at the close of President Trump's presidency, when Joe Biden took office, inflation was 1.7%. That's under the 2% target for our country. The borders in some places were closed, and in the rest of the border was on its way to be closed, and we had forced Mexico, Guatemala, and the other countries who were the pathway into America at the southern border to take those who got to our border back into their countries. That has all been flipped. We need to change that. And by the way, as far as the price of gas when you go to the pumps, when this government was turned over to Joe Biden and this administration, we were an energy independent nation. We were developing and exporting more energy, more oil than we were importing. And today, because of President Biden's war on oil and gas, we see the production somewhere between 2 and 3 million barrels a day, less than it was just 2 years ago. Fellow Republicans, I am going to wrap it up now. We are engaged in important fights. You're here because you're a part of that fight. Thank you for being a part of it. And carry it on. We're going to win. Thank you.
Senator Mike Crapo winning his 5th term as senator from the state of Idaho. Been there 30 years now, it's amazing. And Dr. Witt, we heard his speech there. He hit all the big points that he's been talking about throughout his campaign.
He did.
Yeah.
And, hopefully the 31st year will be the year that he actually influences all those things that he said his presence is needed for. So
right, touching on those things that before a president took office to now, the question is, okay, now what has changed, or what is the remedy to that situation?
Well, I don't know what the answer to that is, but I do know that voters are drawn by how well the economy is doing, and we blame the president for that, even though the direct impact on the economy is quite small, right, of the president. So, but the inflation, I think, is really fueling a lot of the midterm discontent, and of course the historic pattern is that the president's party suffers in the midterms.
Sure.
Now, we may see that moderated by things that are unusual that have happened. The overturning of Roe versus Wade, for example, may have driven voters to the polls in important swing states.
For now, we want to send it over to Joe Paris, chief political reporter, standing by. We were talking to one of the AG candidates earlier, Democratic candidate Tom Marcouche, and now you're tracking some of those results coming in.
We've got some preliminary results rolling in, Morgan, yes, and we'll take a look at this. I think it's fair to say it might be the most anticipated race in this election, especially since they called the governor's race 3 minutes after 9 o'clock. But let's take a look here. With 4% of the results in, Tom Marcouche does lead Raul Labrador, again, as we've been talking about so far here during our coverage. The Bonneville County Clerk's Office has gotten in about 70% of their votes. You can see that Labrador leads out in eastern Idaho. As you come back to the Treasure Valley, though, here in Ada County, as you can imagine, Marcouche is having a slightly more edge here. He's got about 12,000 more votes here, about 15,000 more votes, I should say. Ada County, those are very preliminary results. Likely the results that we have right now are probably just the early votes. So as we take a look out of Ada County, we'll take a look at one more county here, a red county and a Owyhee County. 23% of the vote in Labrador, 371 to Marcouche's 67. Again, this is just 4% of the total vote across Idaho right now. Arcouche with a slight edge. We'll keep an eye on that one for sure. Over in the race for Secretary of State, Phil McGrain, the Ada County clerk, and his Democratic challenger, Sean Keenan, right now. You can see McGrain outpacing him about 2-to-1, 2/3 to 1/3, I'd say there, almost exactly. So we'll keep an eye on that one as well. And here's a big one that we are talking about tonight. The amendment to allow lawmakers to call themselves back. Right now, Idahoans, 4% of them in, 54% say no. Brian Morgan, Dr. Witt, we'll see if that changes throughout the night.
All right, Joe, thank you. Of course, these results still trickling in. It's only been 25 minutes since the polls closed, really, and we do not have a lot of the results. Only 4% of precincts are reporting at this point, according to the numbers that we have on our website.
Some of those races have been called already, but again, a lot more numbers to come through and lots to keep track of as we get through the rest of this evening. We are going to take a quick break. Again, we are on
KTVB.com.
KTVB.com right now and on YouTube. But we're going to do some business here where we go to Channel 7 and do a cut in there for a little bit.
And we are going to send it to Doug Petcash, who is standing by at the GOP headquarters in downtown Boise in just a few seconds. He is standing by with Crapo, who has been projected as the winner by the Associated Press for his 5th term in Congress. Doug, take it away.
All right, welcome back to KTVB for an update here on, election night, because we've already seen some races go final here in the state of Idaho. We're talking about the race for governor has been called by AP, and as the race for the Senate seat with Crapo, also getting that bid there. But we're going to go over to Doug right now, who's standing by with, the incumbent and the newly elected to his 5th term, Senator Mike Crapo. Doug? I think maybe a wrong microphone there with Doug Petcash and Senator Crapo, but it sounds like they're having a great time down there at GOP headquarters in downtown Boise. Maybe we should try that again. All right, we'll just talk about this. Let's talk about this win and how early some of these results are being called across the state of Idaho. Dr. Witt from Boise State, political science professor there at Boise State.
Well, I'm a little shocked at how early, although I'm not surprised. I don't think the outcome is going to be different than they're calling it. I just think it's really early.
Sure.
I can envision voters in North Idaho haven't even gotten home yet from voting.
I know.
And the race is over. So it's a little early, and hopefully voters will understand that not every race is settled this early, that your vote matters.
And still a lot of races to decide.
Yeah. We are going to send it back out to Doug. We have resolved our technical issues. Hey, Doug.
Yeah, thank you. We got the audio issue straightened out. I am here now with soon-to-be 5th-term incumbent Republican senator from Idaho, Mike Crapo. Senator, you didn't have to wait long for the results tonight. How does it feel to win that 5th term?
Well, I always run like I'm 10 points behind and take nothing for granted. And I feel that the people of Idaho expect and deserve to have me tell them why they should re-elect me when I run for office. And I tried to make the case that right now I believe that America is under attack. Our system of government is under attack. Our Constitution is under attack. And frankly, the foundations of our freedoms are under attack. And it's critical that Americans across this country stand up, regardless of party, and support the kind of return to protection of the Constitution and protection of our free market economy and protection of our freedoms. That is what makes America so great.
You've been doing this a long time. 24 years already in the Senate. This will take you up to 30. Why keep doing this?
Well, because I'm committed to those principles and values that made America strong, and frankly are the principles and values by which Idahoans believe we should govern. And I'm committed to making sure that we fight that fight in Washington, D.C.
Senator Mike Crapo, thank you very much. First of all, real quick, first order of business when the new Senate takes effect.
Well, the first order of business is very clear. Stop the spending spree. We are going to stop blowing this economy out and pushing the inflation that is hurting every single American in every walk of life.
Senator Crapo, thank you very much, and congratulations again on your victory this evening.
Thank you.
Take care, sir. Let's go back to Morgan, Brian, and Joe in the studio.
All right, thank you very much, Doug. And there it is. Yes, the acceptance speech we heard on stage from Senator Crapo earlier this evening on KTVB.com, and that's what he said to us there on KTVB.
Yep, beating Democratic challenger David Roth and independent candidate Scott Cleveland for his 5th term in Congress.
All right, so we're going to take a break from this at KTVB, but we want to continue our coverage at KTVB.com. We're going to do that after we dip out here, so you can stay with us here if you're watching on KTVB.com, but at KTVB, we'll be back for full coverage at 10 o'clock for our news extended version of our news at 10.
I also want to put a plug in for KTVB Plus. So for those of you that have Roku or Amazon Fire Stick, you can also download the KTVB Plus app and you can watch us, stream us there as well. Thanks so much for joining. We'll see you in a bit.
And we're back, just like that.
Back with Dr. Stephanie Witt, we have Chief Political Reporter Joe Paris tracking the numbers. First, before we head out to our crews who are out in the Treasure Valley, in Canyon County, and in Ada County, sorry about that, Canyon County, Ada County, at the elections office, I do want to send it over to Joe because, Joe, it's now 9:30. I know Ada County was saying on Twitter earlier that they were going to have a lot of results coming in at 9:15. What are you seeing right now for the state's largest county and for the state as a whole?
Yeah, we're starting to see results come in. I think really the fresh batch that we just got in a short time ago is really all the early voting and the absentee voting. Ada County has a great elections team, as we know, so it wouldn't be out of the question to start seeing some of the results that were actually voted today actually in the equation. If we have a minute, though, let's go around the bend and take a look at some of these races. You may remember a few minutes ago, we're at 4%. Now we're up to 5%. Scott Bedke leads the race there over Terry Pickens Manweiler in the battle to be Idaho's lieutenant governor. In the race for U.S. Senate, as you heard, Mike Crapo. He looks like he's got the win there. In the battle for the Attorney General, with 5% of the vote in, Democrat Tom Arkush is slightly ahead of Raul Labrador, the Republican here in this race. If we want to look specifically in Ada County, you can see that Arkush is outpacing Labrador about 2-to-1 there, 2/3 to 1/3, I should say. Down in Owyhee County, though, you can see it's flipped over there. Labrador a huge edge down in the more conservative Owyhee County. And if we go over to the eastern part of the state, Bonneville County, again, Labrador's got a nice 700 vote edge there in Bonneville County with about 70% of the vote there. And in Bingham County, a very similar story there over in eastern Idaho with Labrador and Arkush, seeing some very different results depending on what part of the state you are in. But again, 5% of the total vote in right now, Arkush with about a 10,000 vote lead. As we take a look at a few more things here, Phil McGrain up on Sean Keenan pretty comfortably. And that amendment here in Idaho, it is split 50-50. We'll see if Idahoans want the lawmakers to be able to call themselves back.
What can they do currently, Joe? The governor has to call them
That's
back
right.
in special session, correct?
Correct. So only the governor right now in Idaho can call back lawmakers after they've actually officially ended their session for the year. If Idahoans say, yes, we want to give them this ability to call themselves back, lawmakers, it would take 60% of them would have to say, yes, we all want to come back and discuss a topic after the session has been adjourned for the year. So we'll see if Idahoans think it's a good or bad idea.
And for now, the governor can only call them back for 20 days. But if they were to pass this, if Idahoans were to pass this, the legislature could call themselves back for who knows how long.
Well, because there's no mention. There's no parameters on how long they can be in session when they call themselves back for a special session.
Which is interesting. It's different parts of the Constitution.
Yep. All right, thank you very much, Joe. So we're going to check back in with you again as we get going. But looking at some of these numbers, like Russ Fulcher is in a pretty good race with Kaylee Peterson. Right now, 62-36. Looking at other numbers, Mike Simpson and Wendy Norman, the representative, or for the representative from District 2, Mike Simpson, the incumbent, the Republican, it's a tight race there.
It looks tight.
It looks tight.
Okay, but
50-49.
Yeah, I wouldn't get too excited. I think what we're seeing there are early Ada County numbers coming in, right? So when you look at Joe's map, you can see that the Ada County numbers are coming in, and so that will look like the Democrats are much closer than it's going to be when you add in all the other counties' votes.
Well, I mean, traditionally, what we've said in the past is that Democrats are more likely to vote early to do the absentee ballots. Right. So a lot of those numbers that come in early are typically more leaning Democratic nationwide.
But nationwide. But in Idaho, we've seen, because there are so many Republicans, outnumbered Republican absentee ballots have well outnumbered Democratic absentee ballots. Well, not by rate, but basically by number.
Right.
Yeah, by number.
And we did have the situation in Canyon County where the Republican county clerk requested people to vote early and use absentee ballots because there's a concern about having enough poll workers and having the ability to get people through the voting process. It's a slow ballot in Canyon County, a lot of things on there. So I think the county clerk saw that we needed to get some of those votes in early to just not have a snafu tonight, right?
And that's an excellent segue, Dr. Witt, because that's where we want to go next.
Yeah, Jude Binkley standing by at the Canyon County elections offices, and Jude has been all over Canyon County today, tracking some of the really long lines. Kind of like Dr. Witt said, they knew this was going to happen. They knew there were going to be some long lines. But interestingly, Jude, we've seen races in Canyon County that have not been contested by Democrats and have solely Republican candidates on those ballots.
That's right, Morgan, and we have been jumping around Canyon County all day, and we're right back where we were about 9.5 hours ago at the Canyon County Elections Office. Joining me is Joe Decker. Now, Joe, polls closed about an hour and a half ago, and since then I've seen people with absentee ballots. I've seen some things dropped off. Can you walk me through what's been going on?
Yeah, so right now we received around 16,000 absentee ballots, so the people behind us right now are just finishing up flattening those, sorting them by precinct, so we can get all those tabulated by tonight and get the results out. And then as well, we're having our polling locations, our precincts starting to come back in, so we'll get the sticks out of those and get those results tabulated as soon as possible.
So from polling locations, they're kind of counted at the site, and they're brought securely over here to the elections office, and then you guys tabulate them from here.
Yeah, correct. So we have a precinct count system, so people, when they actually slide their ballot in after they vote at their polling location, when they slide it in, it counts it right there. So they're all right there. We just have, it's like a really expensive encrypted thumb drive that we bring back here, plug into a computer, and tabulate the results.
So you said about 16,000 absentee ballots. Do you have any numbers for the rest of the turnouts in the county?
Yeah, so we've had over 33,000 people vote at their polling locations today. So I'm thinking we're probably going to hit around 49-50% turnout, which is pretty good for a midterm. I look back in 2018, we were at 64%, so a little below 2018, but we've had about 20 to 25,000 more voters move into Canyon County or become voting eligible in that point. So the total vote numbers will probably be close to the same as they were in 18.
And Morgan just mentioned it. We did hear about some longer lines across the county. Other than that, have there been any other hiccups?
No, and we expected the long lines. That's why we pushed for the early voting and the absentee voting. But yeah, we had some places with an hour, maybe an hour and a half wait. But people want the election day experience, and sometimes that means standing in line and waiting to cast your ballot.
Long wait for some people. I imagine it'll be a long night here, too, at the elections office.
Yeah, it's looking like it. So, yeah, we'll be here for a long time burning the midnight oil to make sure we get the results to you guys.
All right, well, we'll keep you posted from right here at the Canyon County Elections Office. We'll go ahead and send it back to the desk.
All right, Jude, thank you. We've also got Abby Davis out live in Ada County as well.
Yes, we do. Let's get over to Abby there at the Ada County Elections Office. Not inside anymore, Abby. You are now outside in the elements.
Yes, and let's just say these workers are brave. The rain is coming down pretty hard. Now you can see behind me, cars are just rolling in throughout the county. Workers are unloading ballot boxes onto these carts, and it's not just the ballot boxes that they are unloading. They are really unloading all of the equipment from the different precincts, any sort of technology, any sort of ballot box, that is all getting dropped off here at the Ada County Elections Office. Now they added about 40 precincts this year. There were only 150 precincts last year. This year there's upwards of 197 to be exact, and that is to account for growth within the county. So you can just see how much effort Ada County is putting into ensuring these elections run smoothly. There weren't any really big issues with long lines today. People were in and out pretty fast. Now all of the precincts dropped their ballots off here. Nothing is tabulated at individual polling locations. All of the tabulations take place here at a computer that is not connected to the internet for security reasons. Now we'll just do, yep, you can see there's just a line of cars just rolling in. There were 117,000 people who voted here in Ada County today. Compare that to early voting and absentee ballot voting. That was 65,000 people. So you can see just how many people turned out today versus how many people have voted in the weeks prior. Now, Jude mentioned the burning the midnight oil. These workers will probably be here upward almost to 2 a.m., late or early, just how you look at it. So they are working hard, braving the rain to make sure votes are counted and everything is done as quickly as possible. You can see over here, we'll do a little walk. You can see inside here where all of these ballots are going. They are very well organized. They have everything set up just to see as efficient as possible. Back to you guys.
A well-oiled machine. Thank you very much, Abby, for that. Look at what's happening as those cars pull in. And then we watched, remember, during the primary, if you were with us, I believe it was Andrew who was out in Canyon County. Maybe it was Ada County. I can't remember. But the cars were lined up.
Yeah.
And it took a long time for them to get through. So this is a process. I know some of these races have been called early, but there's still a lot of votes that still have to be counted and a lot of races still left undecided right now.
And speaking of some of those races left undecided, we're taking a look at election results on the Secretary of State's office website. We also have them on our website, ktvb.com/elections. But specifically, Superintendent of Public Instruction, Debbie Critchfield, the Republican candidate, is up with 57% of the vote so far. Terry Gilbert has 42.5% of the vote. And right now, actually, our Doug Petcash is live at the GOP headquarters with Ms. Critchfield. Doug?
That's right, Morgan. I am here with Debbie Critchfield, Republican candidate for State Superintendent of Public Instruction. And right now, with very early results, I believe it's about 66 to 34% at this time, or 64 to 36. So Debbie, early on, but how are you feeling about the way the campaign went and how the numbers are coming in tonight?
I'm really proud of the work that myself, my team, my family, supporters, just everybody put into it, the effort, and it's just, tonight's the payoff. Absolutely, feel good.
And we've seen already some of the major races being called already for governor, for Brad Little, and for Senate, for Senator Crapo. What do you make of those early races, those races being called so early?
But I think it's a great sign for me. So let's keep that number going the right direction positively for the Critchfields.
So if you do pull this out, what's the first order of business?
Get organized for a transition so that we've got a smooth transition going into January. We don't want any disruptions for kids or teachers.
And then policy-wise, what's the first thing?
Oh boy, I'm looking at my platform pieces, more career technical education, looking at supporting our school districts regionally, looking at the commitments of more money coming into education and targeting those to the outcomes that we want for kids.
So are you feeling nervous at all right now?
No, should I be?
I would until it was final myself.
I don't feel nervous because we put our heart into it. We work so hard, and at the end of the day, it's on the voter at this point, and so I feel good about what we've done, and we'll see what the outcome is.
All right, Debbie Critchfield, thank you very much, and best wishes on the rest of the evening.
Thank you so much, Doug.
Take care. All right, we're going to send it back now to the studio to Morgan, Brian, and Joe after talking with Superintendent of Public Instruction candidate Debbie Critchfield. Guys.
All right, you guys, thank you. And Critchfield is the former president of the Idaho State Board of Education. She is up against the former Idaho Education Association, which is the union for teachers. Former president of that, Terry Gilbert, running on the Democratic ticket as well.
And there was a debate we held here at Channel 7 for that office. And prior to that, the primary was pretty hotly contested on the Republican side, which Debbie Critchfield kind of advanced from that stage and representing the Republican Party right now. And again, with about 57% of the votes. Dr. Witt, we've talked about that primary, well, even back in May and then since then. But this is going kind of, as you heard her say, she's not too worried right now.
That's probably warranted. I would be surprised if it were otherwise. Now, the early returns, like we just said, are dependent on which counties are reporting. And so it looks like it's much closer than it's probably going to be at midnight. Okay, so
that's because Idaho has 44 counties, and I think according to some of these, the Secretary of State's website, 1 has officially fully reported.
Right. That's right, and 8 have partial numbers.
Right.
So you'll see that change. It doesn't mean that something weird is happening with the voting process. It just means that more counties are sending in their completed ballot count.
And should Critchfield win this election, I think what we're looking at really, and what we've talked about on our debate, on IPTV's debate, on Viewpoint, is really this idea of school choice and vouchers. And I don't know how much you want to speak to that, but that's something that, she might take a step back as soon as she gets into this position if she wins and say, I'm going to assess this, I'm going to see who I have in the legislature, who I have in these statewide offices, and then move forward with some sort of school choice program, not necessarily vouchers maybe.
Right. I think that her opponents in the primary were much more forceful about wanting to move to vouchers. We already provide some parent choice. Charter schools are available, for example. And I think that former Representative Brandon Durst was much more likely to have wanted full-scale vouchers, take your money out of the public school and put it in a private school if you want. And so I think, at least what I think I heard, Debbie Critchfield's saying is that she wanted to assess all of those kinds of options and see what's going to be best for Idaho. But I do think the legislature will bring this up again.
Yeah.
And it will be an issue that we all have to stay on.
Yeah, I think we can expect that come January.
Hey, Joe. I want to jump over to you really quick. I know it's kind of an abrupt
That's so
change,
abrupt.
but whatever.
I liked it.
We can do that now because we're just, we're having some fun with it.
We're just on the internet.
We're just on the
Let me get in the
intranet.
shot. I wasn't in the CC. I was over here.
Yeah, get back in your spot. All right, so here, you got any new numbers you want to share with us over there? I see some of the things you're cycling through, whether it's governor and Crapo. We've kind of handled that already, but you're seeing some more of those numbers for governor.
Yes, and I'm going to be honest. This is a brand new graphic that just appeared while I was messing around over.
I like it.
So you can see some of the numbers here in terms of what we're talking about. I'm going to see if I can zoom out on this. Okay, I can. So you can see that, Governor Little is in the lead here. And if you're just joining us, seriously, like minutes into our coverage here, about 9:03, 9:04, the Associated Press, they called the race for Governor Little. You can see that he's got, almost 30,000 vote lead over Stephen Haidt. You can see that Ammon Bundy down there, he's got about 9,000 votes. It's interesting, though, as the votes are coming in, we can actually take a look county by county. This is only 10% of the vote, but I want to, again, say the AP called this, and they have their own formula. They're very confident in. But if you look just at Ada County, with 17% of the vote in, you can see how Governor Little he performed against Haidt and Bundy, as well as Sand and Davidson. But you can see that Governor Little here, he really has a strong majority. And I had spoken to people for the last several months about what would the market share, so to speak, be for Ammon Bundy. You can see that updating in real time. You can see here, though, in Ada County, it was a pretty healthy lead for Governor Little. So as we get through the night, though, we're going to get into some more details here, especially at the top of the hour at 10 o'clock when we go over full time to KTVB.
All right, Joe.
All right, thanks, Joe. Mentioning those numbers for governor, Dr. Witt, we were talking about this. I mean, again, early in the night, 9% for Ammon Bundy. That's going to change.
Well, I think it will. Look for those panhandle counties to deliver a lot of votes for Ammon Bundy. The politics in North Idaho and the panhandle are different. The more conservative wing of the Republican Party has more power up there. And the counties that voted for McGeehan for governor in the primary were all up in the panhandle. So assuming that McGeehan, who is part of that further right faction of the party, if Bundy gets some of those kind of votes, then I think remember they're an hour behind. So now that their polls are closed and they start counting, we may see some more for Bundy. Definitely not enough to make a difference in the result. But that's where I expect to see his support.
Really quickly, that faction you're referring to would be the Kootenai County GOP Central Committee.
Yeah, I love that name.
It's long.
Up in Coeur d'Alene.
Yes.
That kind of took over the GOP at the convention, and that's how we have Dorothy Moon now as chairwoman of the party in Idaho.
Yes, and we saw some really interesting politics around North Idaho College.
Yep.
And a similar set of candidates running in the CWI trustee race. So we'll see some of that politics down here.
I want to get back to that in just a moment, but right now, Governor Brad Little, incumbent, has been projected the winner of the gubernatorial race here in Idaho, and he has just taken the stage at the GOP headquarters. Take a listen.
Collectively is a large result of Teresa's leadership and what Teresa does for our family, and there's no way I could do this job without her. So thank you, my dear. I also want to thank my team, my staff, and frankly, all the public servants in Idaho that continue to work every day to serve every one of you as servants of the state of Idaho. So please thank them for me. And of course, very importantly, I want to thank the people of Idaho. The people, today's the day when the people of Idaho voice is heard. When they look at all the candidates and make the decisions about what they want to do. We pulled off a successful campaign, and it was broad and far-reaching from one end of the state to the other. To me, the election results today translate into giving us a mandate to keep our state on the path of incredible and unprecedented success, to continue to show Washington, D.C. and the rest of the country how to do things right. I believe, and I've been watching the results, and I know you have too, I believe we're going to see a red wave sweep most of the nation. People are tired of record inflation, limited opportunity, and government leaders who ignore the struggles that diminish their opportunities. Here in Idaho, we have responded to the call from businesses and citizens to make government responsive and accountable. Years of consecutive good governing, conservative governing, and positioning Idaho to take back more of their hard-earned money so that they can have record tax relief, to have the strongest economy in the United States, and to have the most stable budgets with the best chance for Idaho to weather any lingering recession. Folks, working together matters. Our ability as elected leaders to get things done matters. Leadership matters. I want to congratulate all of those who during the night will have earned the vote and the confidence of Idahoans. I stand ready to work with them, all of you, to meet people's expectations. We're ready to keep Idaho the least regulated state. We're ready to unleash innovation and enormous potential for businesses and not stifle them so Idahoans can have the maximum opportunity. We're ready to provide Idahoans with more relief from taxes. And
Looks like his audio cut out.
I couldn't tell if that was on site
It looks like it
or
was.
with our production at this side, but it looked like he was kind of checking the mic.
Yeah, I think he knew. Okay,
Unfortunate.
well, I'm sure we're going to hear some sound bites from him later and tomorrow on Wake Up Idaho, of course, too. Governor, oh, nope, he's back. Let's go back to him.
so that we can continue to make investments in roads, water, infrastructure to increase the quality of life for the people of Idaho. Like many candidates in the room, I've spent the last few months, frankly 4 years, traveling the state of Idaho, visiting with Idahoans. We want the same things. Safe communities, increasing opportunities, and strong family values to continue through generations. Much has changed in the last 4 years. Since the last time I stood before you, and things will continue to change for the next 4 years. But I remain committed to managing our state with an eye on letting all of you keep more of your hard-earned money and responsibly making investments, particularly for our children. Most importantly, I'll remain focused on what I've talked about time and time again. Make Idaho the best possible place for our children and grandchildren to choose to stay. Thank you again for your support, and congratulations to all the winners.
All right, we are wrapping up our coverage here with Dr. Stephanie Witt, Brian Holmes, Joe Paris, and myself here on KTVB.com, KTVB Plus, and our YouTube channel. But we will be live at 10 o'clock in just a few minutes on KTVB and KTVB Plus.
We have a full hour. We're going to bring you all the results, as many as we can as they come in. Again, a small number up to this point, but we have lots more to bring you coming up at the top of the hour for the news at 10. Please stick around, and we'll see you then.
Thanks for joining us for our coverage of the 2022 midterm election. The polls closed a couple hours ago and the results are still coming in. Already, though, some of those races have been called by the Associated Press.
That's right. All of Idaho's statewide constitutional officers, both members of the U.S. House delegation, U.S. Senator, one of those seats, the entire Idaho legislature, and most county offices are up for grabs. But as you mentioned, some of them have already been decided, and we'll get to those in just a bit. But first, our team coverage continues tonight. Chief Political Reporter Joe Paris is here in studio with us tonight. He's going to break down the election results as they come in with some updated numbers. Doug Petcash is with the Republicans, who are hosting their election night celebration at the Grove Hotel in downtown Boise.
Andrew Bartline is with the Democrats at the lounge at the end of the universe, is what it's called. Abby Davis is in Ada County, and Jude Binkley is at the Canyon County Elections Office. We also have political analyst Dr. Stephanie Witt. She's a Boise State political science professor. You're here to help us analyze these results and give us some color, some context as they trickle in.
Glad to be here.
We're happy to have you as always.
Yes. So we're going to get to all of that, though, in just a minute. That's just kind of an introduction of what we plan to bring you. But we also have some weather that is heading our way, as well as some election numbers we want to talk about, which is why we want to get over to Rick Lance, who's over in the Weather Center, to tell us about, well, what may be affecting your morning commute.
Well, what we have right now is it's really raining outside. A lot of people have probably noticed that already. So I'm going to begin with this right through here. You can see it's a winter weather advisory, which takes in the Boise area, and likely rain tonight, turning over into snow. Some concerns about winter travel in the morning. Right now, we're right at 40 degrees in most spots. It's a little cooler in Twin Falls. And just to show you the latest on our radar, you can see here in Boise that the rain is coming in. When you see these yellows and these reds, it's not always thunderstorms. Sometimes it's just heavier clouds, which are causing heavier rain showers, and we still have another batch of rain that is coming up here from the southeast. So as we take a closer look at it there, you can see Boise, even in these darker greens, is getting some heavier rain. Estimations are anywhere from 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch of rain overnight. When we move up to the north here, it's changing into some of the snow as it moves up into the northern mountains. And to show you just how much is left in that storm, you can see it right down through here. And once that low starts pushing in, most of the moisture out ahead of it moves up. But as it moves in over Idaho, we're going to get more of a colder northerly flow moving in, and that's what's going to change it to snow. We'll be back as to when it's going to change over and what it could do for our morning commute.
All right, Rick, thank you. And as I mentioned, we are here with Dr. Stephanie Witt from Boise State. You know, as we mentioned, the gubernatorial race has already been called. It was called at 9:04, which is perhaps maybe the earliest we've seen ever a race called by the Associated Press in that election. And additionally, Senator Mike Crapo won his 5th term as called by the Associated Press as well. But we have a lot of other really interesting races going on.
Yeah, I wouldn't tune out the election and go to bed yet. I think that there are important races in the county commissioners, in the row offices for the county, the treasurer and the auditor and the assessor. Some of those are up, the sheriff, and so additionally, I think there are probably some folks following the bond election for CUNA Fire District, and there's another one.
CWI.
The CWI trustee race is really interesting in that we see a group of 4 folks running as a block, identical web pages and talking points. And interestingly, they're identifying themselves as the Republican candidates for a nonpartisan office.
Right.
So setting that aside, it will be interesting to see how they do running against a slate of incumbents.
There's also a constitutional amendment we're paying attention to tonight.
Yes, whether or not the legislature should be able to call itself into special session or not. Currently, that power belongs to the governor, only the governor in the state of Idaho. I predict this is going to fail, but I could be wrong. Voters often, when they don't know what to do, they'll vote no.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to get a lot more no votes than really thinking it through. There may be some lingering resentment, though, about how the COVID special session was handled by the governor. I believe that Utah recently gave its legislature the power to call itself into session. I think they've already done it like 10, 15 times.
Wow.
Just for an example of what's possible.
Yeah. So, I don't know that most Idahoans are going to want the legislature to be here a lot more than they already are.
Right.
but we'll see.
Yeah, we are keeping tabs on that. Joe Paris, chief political reporter over there at the touch screen, keeping tabs of those results, really interactive county by county results. I know you've been following the numbers for that SJR amendment, and you're also following right there the gubernatorial race.
Yeah, and you know, we announced right at the top of the program, Morgan, that Governor Little, the race was called for him at 9:04, so it was very quick.
Yeah.
But let's take a look at how this kind of breaks down. And I wanted the caveat here, only 15% of the state reporting the results so far. But yeah, you can see Governor Little, 60% of the vote so far, Stephen Hite, 28%, Ammon Bundy with 10%. There was questions about how would Bundy and Hite split the vote there in comparison to Little. And I just want to zoom in here on Ada County, Idaho's largest county. You can see kind of how this broke down here in terms of the conservative vote, the independent vote for Mr. Bundy, and how Democrats showed out as well. Let's get to a few other races real quickly here. In the race for Lieutenant Governor, Republican Scott Bedke leads the Democrat, Terry Pickens-Manweiler there by a pretty healthy margin, 17%, or about 14,000 votes. Over in the Attorney General's race, this is maybe the highly anticipated race of the year here in Idaho. We saw that Tom Arkush had about a 10,000 vote lead pretty early on in the night, and that was likely from some of the early returns in Ada County. And if you look at Ada County, you can see that's likely going to be the county that Arkush does best in, the most left-leaning county, really in the state outside of Blaine County, but the population base down in Ada a lot higher. Arkush, though, he's maintaining a slight lead. We'll see if that carries throughout the night. We'll take another look here at a few other races. McGrain up big on Sean Keenan in the race for Secretary of State. Also here on this amendment, and again, this is what Dr. Witt was just talking about a few minutes ago. This is asking Idahoans, should lawmakers be able to call themselves back into session? So far, with 10% of Idaho reporting on this question, 57% of Idahoans say no. About 12,000 more Idahoans say no so far at this point in the night. And real quickly, while we're watching the balance of power here, I know we're watching the battle for the United States Senate. Right now, the Republicans have a slight edge, 46 seats to 45. There are still a few races that are up in the air. I do believe the state of Georgia is getting very close here at 49 to 49% between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. Of course, the state of Idaho, they do play into this battle of the balance of power. As we mentioned, though, Mike Crapo pretty healthily defeating his opponents here. But Morgan, Brian, Dr. Witt, I'll send it back to you for now. But there's a lot of interesting things for us to get into as more results come in. Again, this is really just the early returns. It's funny to say that since we've already called a few races, but as the night goes on, we'll get more insight on how the state of Idaho really voted today.
All right, thank you, Joe. And speaking of early, somebody who's going to have an early night tonight has already been declared the next governor of Idaho, Brad Little. You can see there, proclaimed at 9:03 around that time tonight, 60% of the votes so far. Doug Petcash is at the Republican headquarters tonight in downtown Boise, and he has Governor Little with him. Doug?
How do we look? I know you.
Brian, thank you very much. Well, thank you, Governor. That was actually live on TV. Thank you for the compliment. So you had to wait 3 minutes tonight to 9:03 until your race was called. How did you while away those minutes?
Well, I'm not a big fan of calling races early because I think it's a little bit of an insult to the people of Idaho that haven't voted. Obviously, the pontificators at the national level have done a lot of math and knew if certain numbers were coming in, the rest of them would be that way. But I'm not a big fan of it. People can wait an hour or two before the results came out, but I'm very gratified by the vote, and then we'll wait till the end of the evening to see the magnitude of it.
Also, Senator Crapo's race was called in his favor as well. Is this what you expected to kind of see a Republican sweep on the state lines?
Maybe what we hoped and prayed for and we worked for. But literally today's the people's day. Today's the people of Idaho's chance to make a statement, and we're very gratified that they agreed with what we've done in leadership in the past and what we'll do in the future.
We are seeing this split, though, in the Republican Party with the traditional moderate Republicans, the ones, and also those who are leaning farther to the right. How can you now, in a second term, work as well as the Democrats and independents to bring everyone together?
Well, I just said up there that I'm going to work with everybody, and I've got a pretty good record of doing that. You know, we have lots of Republicans in Idaho. In fact, Idaho's becoming even a more Republican state. That's almost a force of nature. You know, nature abhors a vacuum, and when you get that many of them, they tend to divide a little bit. But that's, you know, that really puts a bigger burden on us to try and work with everybody so that the bulk of the people of Idaho know that their work's getting done.
I want to ask you about two issues now. No time to celebrate yet. I got to get to some business. The $410 million the legislature approved for education.
Yep.
Where would you like to see that money go when the legislature convenes?
Well, obviously, my highest priority is literacy. We're getting new literacy data every day. If we're moving the needle on literacy, maybe we won't have to put more in there. Teacher compensation and career technical.
Also, of course, abortion, the new abortion laws that have been passed here in the state. You signed those with very big concerns about enforcement mechanisms and whatnot. When the legislature comes back together, and I realize it's still in the courts, do you think they need to clean up the law to take away some of the gray areas?
Well, the courts are going to give us more direction about what's, you know, what works on the national level, what's going to, we're in both the state court and the federal court. We get those worked out, but I have, you know, I'm going to always continue to be pro-life, but, you know, we've got two lives involved, the life of the baby, and we got the life of the mother, and we want to be sure we protect both lives.
And real quickly, sir, first order of business once the new session kicks in, your new term kicks in.
Education will probably be number one.
Okay. All right. Governor Little, thank you very much. Congratulations on winning a second term. All right. Oop. Incumbent now, Governor Brad Little, back to you guys.
All right, Doug, thank you. Good to hear from him. And of course, in Idaho, second in command, we have a position called Lieutenant Governor. The current Lieutenant Governor and incumbent Brad Little have sort of had an adversarial relationship that's made national headlines.
And they run on separate tickets.
They do. They're not down ballot like a VP and a president. Janice McGeehan, you know, she had a failed attempt at a run for governor during the primary, but the Republicans have a solid candidate in Scott Bedke, the longest-serving Speaker of the House in the state of Idaho right now. Our numbers show he has 58% of the vote. His Democratic opponent, Terry Pickens Manweiler, has 39% of the vote right now, and she is a solid candidate. I mean, what are you seeing in this race? Has there ever been this much attention maybe on a lieutenant governor race?
Not that I can recall.
Yeah.
And it's really funny when you think about it. It's an office that doesn't have a lot of duties, really. You know, there's some presiding in the Senate, but mostly it's to fill in if the governor's out of state or you need something. And governors will often work with their lieutenant governor to identify projects or, you know, some kind of task force that they want the lieutenant governor to take on. Yeah, our system, they run separately. There are states where the governor and the lieutenant governor run as one ticket like we do for presidency. But in our case, it is possible that you have a governor of one party and a lieutenant governor of another. And that was the case with Cecil Anderson, Butch Otter at some point.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then Scott Bedke, former Speaker of the House, as you mentioned, we heard him talk about how he wants to return integrity to the position. Yeah. We've seen a little bit of mixing up of that over the last 2 years or 4 years, especially the last 2 years when it comes to Lieutenant Governor, and who's in that spot right now with Janice McGeehan. But speaking of the Democratic candidate, that is where Andrew Bartline is right now at the Democratic headquarters with that Democratic candidate. Andrew.
Yeah, that's right, Brian. I'm with Terry Pickens Manweiler. You're the Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor. This is an office that got a lot of attention with Janice McGeehan currently in that seat right now. We've heard Scott Bedke say he wants to return honor, or I can't remember the right word he used to that. Dignity, correct. How are you feeling about that? I know you're running against Bedke, but do you have a similar sense? What are your thoughts?
Well, that's the exact reason why I decided to run for this office, was that the gamesmanship and the politics and the theater that our present Lieutenant Governor put on, that's why I chose this race, because I too want to restore the integrity and the dignity of the office.
There's some preliminary numbers coming in. I saw you watching that slideshow a moment ago. Bedke has you by a couple points right now. It's early numbers. What are you feeling?
Well, we're holding our own, and I got to tell you, we put everything on the table in this race, and I feel good about it.
You said earlier when you were talking on the podium, you're not a politician. You just decided this is something you want to do. This is something that matters to you. Can you explain that a little further?
I would say it was something I decided I needed to do, because I felt like that our voices, the voice of majority of Idahoans, are not being heard by our present legislature and our present government. And I had to be the voice of the people of Idaho, because we're not being heard, we're not being represented. We've got people, you know, the extremists really taking over our state, and I want to say enough's enough, and this is the best way to do it.
Historically, we know these statewide constitutional offices are dominated by Republicans. Historically, they seem to win these over and over again. What can success look like for the Democrats, even if they are losing many of these races?
I think we've already succeeded because I forced my opponent, who's never had to run a campaign, to actually run a campaign. And that's going to make something, that's going to be a difference, because people aren't going to be afraid to run for these races after they see how we can do it.
Is there anything that we haven't touched on you think is just pertinent that you want to get out, something you want to say? Because when you talked on that podium, you really riled up this room. This is a group of people, the Democrats here, they listen to you and they care what you have to say.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. No matter what happens tonight, we have a group of people in this state that want to be heard, and I'll be their voice if they ask me to.
Well, those numbers are coming in for this lieutenant governor's race. We know Scott Bedke does have a lead right now over Terry Pickens-Manweiler and the Democrats. We'll throw it back to you in the studio, Brian and Morgan.
All right, thank you very much, Andrew. As you said, despite the outcome of tonight, there's a lot of people out there who have the same sentiment. They're not going anywhere, no matter win or lose. I mean, they're still going to be active in what is going on in our state, whether that's a statewide or even the local races that are taking place.
Exactly, and this is her first time, and she's not held a position at the state level before. I mean, Scott Bedke has a lot more name recognition given his position in the legislature. She even said historically she was a Republican, but the party sort of left her. And so it'll be interesting to see where she goes. For now, here on KTVB, we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more of your 2022 midterm election coverage when we come back.
All over the Treasure Valley, as you mentioned at the top of the hour, but we're going to check in right now with Abby Davis, who's at the Ada County Elections Office, kind of see how things are playing out through the night there, because again, the most populated county in the state, got to deal with a lot of ballots.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, I am here with Chelsea Catarini, and you are with the Ada County Elections Office. Now, it is a little bit of organized chaos here right now. So we just want you to let the viewers in, like what's going on here.
Sure. So now that polls have closed, all of the precinct chief judges bring all of the equipment and ballots to Elections Central. We're here in the elections warehouse, and they pull in and we unload all of their equipment. It's quite a bit, as you can see, and they bring it here to Election Central, and we take it where we need it to go.
Okay, awesome. So then once those are unloaded. You can see Logan over here to Logan's left. Those ballots are separated from the unvoted to the voted. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah, so we have we send a lot of ballots to each polling location to make sure we have plenty on hand. So when we bring them to this location, we make sure that we separate those voted ballots from the unvoted ballots. The voted ballots are the official election records, so those are retained, and we actually keep the unvoted ballots on hand as well. And so this is the area that we do that separation.
Okay, awesome. And then our last stop is over here. Logan's pointing at it now. What is going on over there?
All right, so you'll probably recognize these. You'll see these at the polling place. This is where you scan your ballot. And so these transfer cases are brought here, and this is where we take out the V drive, and that's where the data is kept for what is on your ballot, basically scanned in to the scanner, and we bring them here to tabulate.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Chelsea. Now, to give you an idea about how many ballots are being counted right now, there was about 65,000 ballots that were turned in early voting or absentee voting. Those are already in, and there were 117,000 people that voted today. So all of those ballots are here. They are being sorted, and then they will later be tabulated. So people will be burning the midnight oil. I'm told they'll be here about until 2 a.m., so a long night ahead of them.
And Abby, I'll ask you, you said with that number, 117,000 in Ada County, the state's most populous county, you might have to bring Chelsea back for this, but do you know the percentage of turnout that is? I know historically we've talked about midterm elections kind of pulling 60%. 2018 was sort of a one-off with 70%. Do you know what that number is, that percentage?
Yeah, so it's high 50s%. Chelsea, I'm going to bring you back in for this. Voter turnout, 59%?
That's correct. Yes, 59%.
Okay, and that's a little bit lower than we saw in 2018, correct?
That's right, yeah, a little bit lower this time.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, Abby, thank you. I appreciate you answering that on the spot for us.
All right, so now we're going to check in with Jude Binkley, who's out on the other side of the Treasure Valley, in the western side, out in Canyon County. He's been following what's been happening out there for most of the day, and he's also in a place where they're counting up those ballots there in Canyon County. Jude?
That's right, Brian. We're here at the Canyon County Elections Office, and I'm here with Joe Decker. We spoke during the digital show, but I wanted to bring him back. Now, Joe, there's been a lot going on. I see people counting things. We saw that you opened 16,000 envelopes today, and some people bringing in some things in the back. Could you talk about what's going on tonight?
Yeah, so behind us, poll workers are opening, flattening, sorting the remainder of the absentee ballots. We had roughly 16,000 absentee ballots returned today, so a lot of work going on back there so we can get those tabulated and the results out. So that's what's happening here. We're waiting on a couple of the precincts to return. We have precinct counters, so once they get back, we just got to take the stick out of there and tabulate those results. And hopefully we'll, we thought we were going to be out of here maybe a little after midnight, but things are moving pretty quick, so hopefully we can get those results to you before the clock strikes midnight.
So we're working on getting results out. We've already had some results come in, right? Where have those numbers come from?
So that would have been all the early votes, a little over 6,800 early votes, and then probably about 9 of the precincts that have already returned. So that's what those totals are right now, and we hope to have another update here in the next 15, 20 minutes.
And we did hear earlier Dr. Witt talk about some of the close local elections or local elections that a lot of people are watching. One of those is the CUNA fire levy. There are some people here who are voting for that. We saw that that's a dead draw right now, or as of about 10 minutes ago. And then also the CWI elections also looking pretty close. Now, Joe, you said 6,800 early votes. What about the rest of the voter turnout for this?
So we had we're looking close to 34,000 people that went through the polling locations today, and then absentees, like I said, right around 16,000. So pretty good turnout. I think we'll probably be about 49-50%. That's pretty good.
And we're jumping around Canyon County earlier today. We saw some long lines at the Church of the Brethren in Nampa and the LDS Church off of Ruth Lane. We heard a couple things about that, but other than that, have you seen any problems at any of the voting locations?
No, everything's ran smoothly. I mean, we expected the lines. Like I said on the digital show, we expected the lines. That's why we encourage people to vote early, vote absentee. But like I said, they like that election day experience, and sometimes that means standing in line and waiting before you can cast your ballot. But outside of that, long lines, that was it.
All right. Well, things are running pretty smoothly here in Canyon County. We'll go ahead and send it back to the desk.
All right, thank you very much, Jude. Canyon County, one of those places we're watching because there are, basically uncontested races there. I think I think we were talking about this earlier, Dr. Witt, like some 24 or so. The Democrats just didn't offer up a candidate across the state, Canyon County being one of those spots where pretty much every position does not have somebody from the Democratic side of the ticket.
Yeah, the Republicans have had a lock on Canyon County for many years, decades actually, so I'm not surprised at that. And we saw a number of legislative races throughout the state where there is no Democrat on the ticket, right? So we knew before today even started that the Democrats would not have a majority, of course, in the legislature. And they just aren't able to field the candidates across the state.
Something else we're watching closely in Canyon County, but as well as Ada County as well, is the College of Western Idaho trustees race.
Yeah.
This is a nonpartisan race, but interestingly, you've got 4 incumbents and then 4 challengers running who are sort of touting this similar platform. They've been backed by the GOP in, again, a nonpartisan race. What are you seeing there?
Well, I'm seeing the erosion of the idea of a nonpartisan race.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
And that's been something that's been creeping into all of our nonpartisan races, whether for city or school district, or in this case, to be a trustee for the College of Western Idaho. So maybe confusing to voters, I guess, if you learn about the 4 running as Republicans and then you get in the booth and there's no D or R to help you decide who is who, right?
Right.
I think there are a couple extra candidates in there that aren't part of the block or incumbents. 1 or 2 other people, don't want to leave them out.
Yeah.
A trustee of a community college is kind of a technical, thankless job. It's great that people are willing to do that public service, but we're seeing these positions get politicized. And so people running for school district, running for these trustee positions that are all about ferreting out critical race theory or social justice programming. And probably what they'll be dealing with most of the time are budgets and policy stuff, not very sexy issues.
It's mostly budgets, exactly. All right, thank you very much, Dr. Witt.
And Joe is going to be watching those results from the CWI election. We'll come back with those, but for now, we're going to take a quick break.
Boy, is it good already. If you've been outside any this evening and you just got to take a look at the roads at this time, the rain's just really coming down. We'll tell you how much rain we anticipate here in the valley, but also the possibility of changing over into snow. And so we're talking about this tonight, a lot on your mind, and then tomorrow morning, take the extra time. a little extra caution. We have a winter weather advisory here in the blue, and then you can see warnings here in the Central Mountains. This is where the heaviest part of the snow is going to come in, but also snow possible down here in valley locations. When you take a look at the latest radar, look how all of this snow is coming down, just especially North Pocatello and into the Central Mountains. But it's mainly rain here in the Boise Valley, and as we come in a little closer, we were noticing this earlier. A lot of times we see this with thunderstorms, but this is just a lot of heavy rain right along through here. That's just about ready to move into Boise. So we've had heavy rain, but we're going to be seeing more of it for tonight as it starts pushing into the area. And you can see it's doing it already, and especially south of the freeway as well as into Boise. Now, as we move up to the north here, we're going to just show you here in the Futurecast. You can see the rain showers for tonight. So this is what we're looking at 10 o'clock. By the time we see this changing over to snow, that's about 2:30 tomorrow morning. 2:30, and it kind of depends on how early it changes over to snow. We have some different opinions on here. If it changes over to snow a little later, about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, it's mainly going to be wet around the area, mainly sloppy with the way of snow, and not a lot of accumulation. That's why you've been hearing anywhere from 1 to 4 inches. If it starts earlier in the night, like you see here at 2:30, it could really get a good shot of snow even into the morning commute. So that's what we're concerned about, and that's why we want to mention it. So this is 3:30 for tomorrow afternoon, and you can see how it's starting to clear up there to the west, and then we just get downright cold. I'll show you that in the 7-day forecast. So here's the snow amounts as you look along through here, and this is kind of just an average number. Like we said, it could be anywhere from 1 to 4, and more in the valley, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches up in McCall, but the heaviest will be in the Central Mountains. Now, we look at the forecast, you see for tomorrow, most of the temperatures will be into the mid-30s. They're coming down. After this storm system moves through, you're going to be seeing some colder temperatures definitely up in the mountains, especially down here at valley locations where you're looking at temperatures in the upper 30s for tomorrow, and wind chills during the day. This is even in the afternoon, will likely be anywhere from about 28 to 31 degrees. So here's a look at the high temperature for tomorrow. That looks mild compared to some of these highs we're going to be seeing through the week. It dries out. We're going to be getting a little more clouds through the weekend, but look at these low temperatures in the morning. 16, 15 for Friday morning. You see 17 for Saturday morning. So we've got these teens for nighttime lows, and then daytime highs that are basically into the mid-30s. And if you get some breezy conditions, we'll be dealing with some wind chills. We're kind of in fall, but moving into some winter-like weather. We're going to be
right to the constitutional amendment, SJR 102. That's the proposed amendment that would allow the Idaho legislature to call itself back into a special session with, I believe it's 60% of the vote by House and Senate members. Currently in the state of Idaho, you can only get called back into special session by the governor, and it can only last for 20 days. Dr. Witt, I want to pull you in right now because so far it's looking like more people don't support this than do.
Yeah, the early numbers look like we got, what, 52% no on this. And I would expect a lot of people who aren't sure tend to vote no on those kinds of amendments. It's a matter of how much power you want the legislative branch to have relative to the governor. The legislative branch would like to have the power to call themselves into session. The governor would like to keep that for themselves. Recall that our sessions are only usually around 90 days, right? A couple months, going into the third month, and if it's really going badly, we get into the fourth month. But this would make it possible that the legislative body could be in session a lot.
Yeah.
Apparently, this is a relatively new rule in Utah. They've had multiple calls back into special session. So it's expensive.
I was going to say, who pays for this?
And it kind of flies in the tradition of our citizen legislature, where the legislators have a day job and they go home to their districts and do that job, and then they come back and serve us for a couple months as legislators. So this could be the beginnings of a big change, and I think the opponents of the constitutional amendment are pointing out, like, Idahoans don't want a full-time legislature.
Right. Which is interesting. When it passed both the Senate and the House, I believe it was 78-26, overwhelmingly passed both houses.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of is the populace is saying, yeah, that's cool what you guys want, but that's not what we want.
Right.
And so that's kind of how things are shaping up right now.
Well, I don't know what the legislators were thinking, but it could be they thought this is a decision that best lies with the public, with the voting public, to say whether they want the legislature to have that power or not.
Right.
This really became an issue during COVID, and the legislature wanted to call itself into session to kind of take issue with the way that the governor dealt with the coronavirus outbreak.
Right.
Okay, we're seeing those numbers right now on your screen, the way things are shaping up. 52% no, 48 yes. Joe, anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you take a look here at our big touchscreen, you can see that there are specific parts of Idaho that have different opinions. So the pinks you're going to see on this screen are counties that are leaning that, yes, this is a good idea. We'll take a look at Owyhee County, for example. With 23% of the vote in Owyhee County, they say, yes, 58-42, that they believe this is a good idea. But if you go next door over to Ada County, with only 24% of the vote in there, the people of Ada County say no, 63-37% there. They don't think lawmakers should be able to call themselves back. If we go over to the eastern side of our state, though, it seems like this is a more popular idea. You take a look over at Cache County, you look at Oneida County, you look over here at Bingham and Bonneville and Jefferson and Teton, all across eastern Idaho right now. It really looks like that is a popular sentiment to allow the lawmakers to call themselves back. But again, across Idaho, it's no right now. And as we look further up north, Nez Perce also saying no. So Dr. Witt, Morgan, Brian, it is interesting to see what parts of Idaho have different opinions. And you can see visually here, it is very split. I also do want to do a real quick update while I have everyone's attention here. I know that we've been getting some questions about the race for Attorney General. Raul Labrador is now kind of inching ahead of Tom Arkush with only 18% of the vote in. We did see Arkush up early in this race, and that was because we had a lot of heavy results in from Ada County, a lot of those early voting numbers in, as well as the general election numbers in Ada County, which of course leans more blue than red, as we've seen historically. But if we zoom out again to the overall look here statewide, with 18% of the vote in, Raul Labrador does leave Mr. Arkush by several thousand votes. Oh, and then you see in real time there, we just got a major update. Now 30% of the vote in here, and you can see with 30% of the vote, you watch Labrador's his bar there jump way up there. So an interesting race that we're watching. And of course, if you're just joining us, we called the race. We didn't call it. The Associated Press called the race for governor earlier tonight.
Governor and Senator Mike Crapo beating out his opponents as well. Is he projected winner to have his 5th term as senator for the state of Idaho.
All right, turning our attention now to one of the other state races, the legislative races for Congress. We have Congressman Russ Fulcher going up against Democrat Kaylee Peterson, who's standing by right now with Andrew Bartline at the Democratic headquarters. Andrew.
Yeah,
That's right. I'm here with Kaylee Peterson, running for Congress against Russ Fulcher, the incumbent. And I know you've seen some of the numbers. It's pretty early in some of the reporting. What is your feeling right now? He does have a lead on you.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's what we expected coming in tonight. We've had 2 decades of a supermajority, and it's going to take more than 8 months for Idahoans to get to know us and trust us. But what I do know is that we've built such an incredible network and community that we can really start uniting Idahoans through policy and purpose again, and that's exciting.
Coming into tonight, where you're up on the podium, you sort of alluded to the fact that you are a new candidate. A lot of people didn't know who you were, and maybe taking down Russ Fulcher wasn't something that you expected to do right away. So then what does success look like on election night if you aren't going to come away with a victory?
Oh, absolutely. I like to say tonight's not a finishing line, but a starting point. Really, it's going to gauge what we do from here over the next 2 to 4 years, and what has been successful and what we need to do to be successful in the future. So tonight is not about the final result, but about where we go from here.
And where do you go from here? If tonight doesn't lean your way, it's not successful, what do you take these results with? What do they mean to you, and what do they tell you going forward?
It really tells us how much work we have to do, how much building of the party, how much how much communication we need, how much team building, and how much funding we need for the next 2 years. But ultimately, tonight's numbers are just kind of a gauge, another tool for us to use.
You set up on the podium earlier as well that you weren't a candidate anybody knew, you hadn't run for office before. What are you doing going forward? Are you going to continue to be somebody who's interested in running for office and representing the state of Idaho in some capacity?
Oh, absolutely. I've already pledged to the people of Idaho that I'm in this race until 2026. And so no matter what the end result is tonight, that people of Idaho should know that I'm going to be building relationships and getting to know each community in the 1st District.
What is your statement to the voters or to the party, something you want to get out?
My hope is that no matter the result tonight, that Idahoans learn that we have so much more in common than we do that divides us. I like to say the greatest lie perpetrated on the American people is that our differences put us at odds with one another. So what I'd like to see is us unite under purpose and as an Idahoan community so that we can get some real progress and stability in our political process.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Kaylee. That's Kaylee Peterson running for Congress against Russ Fulcher. We'll throw it back to you in the studio, Brian and Morgan.
All right, Andrew, thank you. Yeah, we've heard that kind of call for unity from both the Republican Party as well as the Democratic Party, both here in Idaho and nationally. We want to get to the Idaho Secretary of State race now. We haven't spoken a lot about that. Phil McGrain, who is the Ada County clerk, we've interviewed him a lot here on KTVB, is running against Democratic candidate Sean Keenan. Right now, Phil has 72% of the vote, and Mr. Keenan has 28% of the vote. Our Doug Petcash is down at GOP headquarters tonight, standing by with Phil McGrain. Hey, Doug.
Morgan, thank you very much. Yeah, and that lead, as those numbers that you just talked about, has actually grown now with Phil McGrain with 72% to Keenan's 28%. Right now, if I could just set the scene for you quickly here at Republican headquarters, it's starting to quiet down a little bit. We've had speeches already from Governor Little, who's been reelected to a 2nd term, U.S. Senator Mike Crapo reelected to a 5th term, and others. Right now, we're waiting for Representative Russ Fulcher, the congressman from the 1st District of Idaho, to take the stage, as his race is pretty much he has a very big lead in that. But right now, as you mentioned, we are talking with Republican candidate for Secretary of State, Phil McGrain, current Ada County clerk. Phil, the latest numbers show you at 72% to Keenan's 28%. You and I were just looking at the numbers earlier, and it was 67, so the lead is growing. How confident are you feeling at this point?
I feel great. I mean, you know, we've talked over the years. I love this stuff. I love elections. And so it's great to see Idahoans supporting me, and hopefully will lead into some great developments for the Secretary of State's office.
And you know, one of the big things these days, of course, is election integrity, election security. People knowing that their vote gets from their hand into the machine and properly counted. How big of a focus will that be for you as Secretary of the State? You won't be the chief of the elections division, you'll be over it all, but how much of a focus will that be?
I think that's a huge thing, especially right now, is building confidence in our elections. Idaho has a great system when it comes to our elections. I'm proud to have been a part of it. I was at the elections office earlier today, helping make sure everything ran smoothly. And so I really look forward to working with all 44 clerks across the state to make sure we continue to stand out in this state.
So anytime there's a change of regime, there's turnover, changes are made, you ran on a certain platform. What are you going to focus on that may be different from what Secretary Denny's office has been?
You know, I think one of the unique things that I bring to the Secretary of State's office is I've been at the very ground level. I started my career training poll workers, counting ballots, and have worked my way up, and I've worked very closely with the clerks throughout the state. I currently sit as the chair of the Elections Committee for the County Clerks Association, and so bringing that experience will be a really big difference in being able to answer questions. One of the big areas I really hope to see a change is just voter information. So often voters know who they're going to vote for president or governor, but when it comes down to legislative races or county races, they just don't know. And so I'm hoping as a state we can provide greater resources so voters can be informed when they head to the polls.
All right, Phil McGrain, Republican candidate for Secretary of State. Again, 72% to 28% vote count is not final. In fact, it won't be finalized for at least a couple of weeks anyway, but these are unofficial results. Back to you in the KTVB studio.
All right, thank you very much, Doug. You know, election's not all we're talking about tonight here on the extended edition of the News at 10. We got some sports to talk about. A special season for Boise State wide receiver Davis Cutter. Why? Well, because his dad is the offensive coordinator. That's right. They both spoke with Brady Fredericks to talk about what that experience has been like. Stay with us.
News happens.
Broncos are ready to clean some things up and bounce back. The big thing this week, to put more pressure on the opposing quarterback. A good pass rush is essential to limiting explosive plays. You can see on one of the few pressures they had, Devin Wright gets up on the quarterback who throws an interception directly to the lap of J.L. Skinner. But plays like this were scarce. The Broncos didn't record any sacks, only had 1 tackle for loss, and only administered 2 quarterback hits, giving up over 500 total yards of offense. In fairness, they were missing many of their main guys on the front 7 as they battled injuries. George Tarlas is out for the season. Ezekiel Noah and Dimitri Washington each sustained injuries on BYU's opening drive, but they're still hoping to step it up next week so that the burden isn't felt entirely on the secondary.
You know, a lot of people always see what happens at the catch, right? But they don't understand that it starts with the rush. For us, not getting back to the quarterback like we normally do and putting pressure on him and getting in his face and getting hits on the quarterback, which is one of our goals, was a problem. And so because we couldn't do that, you see the outcome.
And there's
magic potion. We know exactly what we need to get done and what we need to grow at. So easy fixes, easy to see what we did good and wrong. So easy to move forward.
On offense this morning, we'll get a chance to catch up with wide receiver Davis Cutter. Obviously, a lot has changed since the last time we spoke with him. His dad is now the team's offensive coordinator. Davis himself has aspirations to get into coaching after finishing out this season, so we asked him and Coach Cutter what the experience has been like this year. They say while it's been special, with their goal of a conference championship still in front of them this season, right now it's all business.
Probably more normal than people would think it is. I mean, it just kind of feels like he's your coach, and every once in a while we have a little moment, but yeah, it just feels pretty normal.
I mean, me and Davis are really close, but when we're in the room like this and the guys are there, I see Davis as a face in the crowd. It's been fun for me to be around him. That's one of the reasons I wanted to be involved in my previous role. I try to coach him the same as I'm talking to everybody else.
I try to take it in every now and then, but I'll look back when it's time to look back. Now I think the better memory is going to be winning a ring and doing what we need to do. So I try to just focus on my job, and I know he focuses on his, and we'll reminisce when that's time.
Up north this weekend, the Idaho Vandals face off with UC Davis in a game with heavy playoff implication. The Vandals are making a strong case to earn an at-large bid to the FCS playoffs, something Idaho hasn't done since 1995, but they need all the wins they can get to boost their chances. The Aggies are also in the hunt with a 5-4 record, and they're led by a familiar name to Bronco Nation, former Boise State head coach Dan Hawkins. Idaho head coach Jason Eck had a lot of praise for what Hawkins offers experience-wise and the success that he's found at UC Davis.
I'm sure he's had more years as a head coach than I've had games as a head coach. So, I mean, he's an experienced dude. He knows what he's doing. And, you know, our staff's got to do a great job. Our players got to do a great job. And hopefully our crowd will do a great job, too, of making a difference in the game. This is a big game because, you know, 7 Division I wins is kind of one of the criteria the selection committee looks at. So getting to 7, I think, is a big goal.
News Channel 7, Brian Holmes, myself, Dr. Stephanie Witt from Boise State, Joe Paris, our chief political reporter, also standing by tracking the results as they come in. But right now, we want to get to our Andrew Bartline, who is live at the Democratic headquarters tonight. Hey, Andrew. Apologies, looks like we do not have Andrew at the moment.
Okay, well, let's bring in Dr. Witt now from Boise State, political science professor. We're going to talk some about these legislative races that we're keeping an eye on. And 3 of them we kind of pointed out earlier this evening we want to keep an eye on. But let's get to number District 26.
Yeah.
That one is kind of looking like it's going to be an upset.
Well, this is it includes Blaine County,
Right.
which has been a reliably Democratic district.
Right.
But now it's been redrawn.
Redistricting, yes.
Exactly. So a good portion of Jerome County question was at the beginning of the night, will the Democrats be able to hold on? The results look to me at this point as if for all three seats, seat A, seat B in the House and the Senate seat, that the Democrat is ahead with a healthy lead. We're talking 66% compared to 34% for District 26 seat A and about the same percentages for seat B in there. So
Seat A would be Ned Burns, who's the Democratic candidate, and Mike Pohanka there for the Republican side. And then that would be the state Senate District 26, Laura Likely and Ron Taylor. Laura Likely losing right now 67 to 33.
Yeah, some of the early guesses were that the change in that district might make it easier for the Republicans to take one or more of those seats in that district. At this point, it looks like the Democrats have a healthy lead.
Wow.
Interesting.
And we're also watching District 6, the state senator and representative races there. District 15 here in Boise. 26, that's the one we just talked about, Blaine and Jerome counties, and as well as District 29 in Pocatello. But right now, as we continue to watch those numbers trickle in, we are going to send it to Doug Petcash. He is standing by at the Republican Party headquarters. Doug, how's it looking down there? I don't know if people are trickling out already now that some of the biggest races have been called.
Yeah, Morgan, Brian, Joe, and Dr. Witt. Yeah, it is thinning out. It's quieter here now. We have heard from on the stage. We've heard from Governor Brad Little, Senator Mike Crapo, a couple of other candidates who have had their races declared already. And as I said going into the coverage, Republicans were very confident about a potential sweep, at least on the statewide races, not in the legislative races. And that's the way it's turning out right now. I've talked with Debbie Critchfield, who is running for Superintendent of Public Instruction, to Speaker Scott Bedke, running for Lieutenant Governor. All of them right now with pretty comfortable leads. It looks like is between Republican Raul Labrador and Tom Arkush for Attorney General. But even that is pretty handily in Labrador's favor, at least the last numbers I saw. So a very good night here for the Republicans. Lots of smiles, and the crowd is starting to thin out, guys.
All right, thank you very much, Doug. Before we toss to Doug and talk to him about that, we were looking at District 15 when it comes to state legislative positions, but apparently we'll talk to that in just a second. Andrew Bartline is now ready to join us here from the Democratic headquarters in downtown Boise. Andrew?
Yeah, that's right, Brian. We just talked to Democratic Party Chair Lauren Necochea as she's kind of trickling her way out the door. As Doug mentioned, there's a handful of Republican candidates that seem to have leads that they're comfortable with. Well, the flip side of that is a lot of Democratic candidates are starting to see that maybe this is closing the book for them in their race and bid at an election for this 2022 year. Now, as we talked to Necochea, she says that she's watching a lot of these races closely. She says it's imperative that a lot of these Senate seats are retained by the Democrats. She says she's looking at places like Moscow, Pocatello, the Wood River Valley, and West Boise. These are areas that are very important to keep seats, pick up seats, because she says the Senate has been a stronghold in a sense that stops legislation that Democrats historically really not liked and really not supported here. And if they lose those seats, as we saw Republicans pick up a handful of seats in the primary months ago, that's something the Democrats are certainly fearful of. We asked her for her final message, as we know that these constitutional seats for Attorney General, Superintendent of Public Instruction typically lean toward the Republicans. She says that she wants the voters to know that Democrats make a difference, even if they're doing it at the margin. So really watching those state house seats, trying to get those margins to play in their favor. We'll throw it back to you, Brian and Morgan.
All right, thank you very much, Andrew. And we are about 4 minutes to go here in our coverage, going up till 11 o'clock. Let's get a quick recap and go over to Joe for some numbers here about what is happening just around the area.
Yeah, here's
some stuff.
Here's some of the races statewide. So this is stuff that'll be on everyone's ballot. Real quickly, we'll get to this. In the race for Idaho's Lieutenant Governor, Scott Bedke has a healthy lead over Democrat Terry Pickens Manweiler. That's with 34% of the vote in. You can see most of all of Idaho counties went red. Teton County right now, the only county that's really blue in that race. Let's also get to a few other races here in the race for Attorney General. Labrador now leads Arkush by about 36,000 votes. We saw Arkush jump out in front as we saw saw Ada County results come in earlier. You can see in Ada County, Arcouche did have a healthy lead, but statewide, Labrador is inching further ahead from Arcouche. Phil McGrain, we heard from a short time ago. Looks like he's likely wrapped this up against Sean Keenan. And then also on the amendment, we're taking a real quick look. Should the Idaho legislature be able to call themselves back into session? This is a close one, 51 to 49. Idahoans with 34% say no. Brian Morgan, Dr. Witt.
A lot closer than it was a little bit ago. That's interesting. All right, thank you very much, Joe.
And for now, we are going to send it over to Chief Meteorologist Rick Lance because he has got to look at a sort of messy morning commute for you guys.
We do it. I just want to show you, of
Channel
course.
7, time for 7 First Alert weather.
Yeah, I just wanted to show you, of course, that first of all, there is a winter weather advisory that's in effect through the area. We're getting some heavy rain right now. And looking at our latest radar, we're getting some pretty heavy rain coming through the area. The heaviest snow is up through some of the central mountains. But if you come down here just a little bit closer, you can see that heavy rain moving in. Looks like it's going to be letting up just a little bit here in about the next hour, hour and a half. What we will be watching is some of the snow that's coming in behind it. And that's the changeover that could take place as the temperatures drop. If you look here toward tonight, you can see some of the rain showers, and then you could see after midnight some of this changing over to snow showers, depending on the timing of this. Once it changes over to snow showers, if it changes over later, that's going to affect the amount of accumulation. So we've been talking about anywhere from 2 to 4 inches on the high side. On the low side, anywhere from about 1 inch to 2 inches, maybe even being kind of slushy as that kind of moves through, as you see these showers toward tomorrow morning. And at this particular point, it looks like it's favoring about the middle of the night where we could actually start getting some snow showers. So watch that for tomorrow morning. Watch Jim Duthie early if you're going to be traveling in the morning to get the very latest on that. If you look around the Magic Valley after the storm system comes through, look at the highs in the mountains are right around 31 degrees, 30 degrees from McCall, Cascade 32. Down here in valley locations after the storm system starts to wrap up, which will be like early tomorrow afternoon, if not late morning. Then we're going to be seeing temperatures up around 38 degrees or so. As you see, 37 for Boise, and with winds as much as 10 to 15 miles an hour. Watch the wind chill. It could even be in the upper 20s for tomorrow. So here's how it plays out. There's the showers for tonight. There's the snow coming in about 2 to 3 o'clock tomorrow morning, and then it starts to decrease for later tomorrow afternoon. After that, we basically have those clear, cold conditions that come in, and it's just as though here we are in fall. We're getting into a really winter scene coming up here for the next several days. Be careful in the morning.
Yeah, be careful. All right, Rick, thank you. Hey, we're also watching the Ada County Commissioner races, 2nd and 3rd District. So far, it looks like both Rod Beck and Tom Daly, 2 Republicans, are coming out on top with 46% of precincts reporting in Ada County.
Surprise you at all, Dr. Witt?
No, we've seen these seats flip back and forth by parties several of the last cycles, and so it's looking like the Republicans will win both of those open seats.
All right, well, thank you very much for your insight tonight. It's been very much appreciated.
Always good to be here.
And you can follow along as the results continue to come in.